All right, we are going live in 5, in 4, 3, 2, 1. Yo, 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 tell me what you know. Welcome to the Sunshine Show. Woo! Tonight I have a we are going live and very, very, very special guest for you guys. I have the one, the only, the most fabulous, the most phenomenal Kellii Scott of Failure in the house. What's up, Kellii Scott?
Wow, that was a pretty stellar introduction. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I've been looking forward to this episode and I'm so stoked to talk to you. So thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
I'm very happy to be here.
Cool. So where are you located, Kellii?
I am in beautiful Los Angeles, California.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. I'm in Santa Cruz, so not too far from
Seriously.
you. Like what, 8 hours?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, unless I mean, if you drive fast, you might be able to make it in 7.
My son is actually graduating from Otis College of Art in LA next month. Very proud of him.
That's pretty incredible.
So that should be good.
Prestigious.
Yeah, I know. Okay, guys. So what's up, Jay? I see all you guys out there. If you have any questions, any comments for Kellii, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them. It's going to be a really, really fun time tonight. I'm super stoked. So for people that may not know who you are or the bands or the people that you've played with, could you give us a little bit of an introduction?
So let me see. So I moved here from Orlando, Florida in 1987 and made my first record about a year later with a band called Liquid Jesus.
Oh, Liquid Jesus.
And played in a bunch of other bands for a while in like the early 90s, joined Failure in 1993. And of course, we, did a lot of touring. I think most people in the 90s maybe saw us with Tool. We did a lot of touring with Tool. And then in 95, we made a record called Fantastic Planet, which is probably our most known record up to that time. And we did a lot of like smaller tours by ourselves. One of the last Lollapaloozas before that stopped, and then we broke up shortly afterwards.
Okay.
In the interim, I played in a bunch of bands. I mean, it's a list way longer than my arm. Did a lot of session work. I was Linda Perry's session drummer for about 6 years. So Monday through Friday, we basically recorded hits for like Christina Aguilera, James Blunt, Pink, and that's also kind of a big list of Enchanted sessions as well. I was super fortunate.
Wow. Oh my God. Talk about the name dropper here tonight. No, dude. Like,
well, I mean, a lot of people might not know, like some people know who Linda Perry is from her success with Four Non Blondes, but a lot of people don't know that like her real success, she's written massive, massive hits like over the last 20 years for basically a who's who.
So how did you like get linked up with Linda?
I met her, I was really good friends with her bass player, Paul Ill.
Okay.
And Paul and I were really close, and he kind of started bringing me by the studio. She has like a really kind of tight knit group. He started bringing me by the studio, and I started to hang out with her and get to know her. And more importantly, she got to know me. And she literally called me up one day and asked me if I could drum tech for a record that she was recording.
Wow.
Which was kind of weird, and it was out of left field, but I said yes. And I showed up, and I worked for like the next week and a half teching this record because she has a massive like 200-piece drum collection.
What?
Yeah, it's huge. It's gigantic vintage drum. Like her guitar collection, her collection of instruments is like second to none.
So does she have like a huge museum for all these instruments called the studio?
Yeah, but they all get played. I mean, that's the thing. Like sometimes you'll go through like almost every drum on the wall for a song. before you find the right sound for that song. It was a pretty amazing work experience for sure.
Wow.
But she hired me to work on that record. And when the record was wrapping up, she basically was like, "Hey, what are you doing like next Tuesday?" I was like, "I don't know. What am I doing?" She's like, "Well, I'm starting some songs for Christina's new record. You want to play on it?" So that's, it like literally, it was just like, bam.
When something like that happens, do you even have to like think about it? Like,
No, no, definitely not. Yeah.
let me talk to my agent. I'll get back
Yeah.
to you.
Well, and more importantly, like the environment was so, like, there are no clocks on the walls, there are no business people allowed, like it's all music 24 hours a day. It's a very select, like 4 or 5 guys that play on all of the records. Um, I mean, it was the perfect environment, the perfect environment. And it was, I mean, it was so much work, that just me becoming better as a musician was like on a daily basis, like breaking through new walls and, just personal boundaries,
Yeah.
being knocked down like left and right. It was by far like one of my greatest musical experiences.
So, how long did that last?
It was about 6 years.
Wow. And
Yeah,
then,
it was roughly about 6 years. And then the business changed a little bit and people weren't doing like full production demos anymore. So she really, I mean, it wasn't really in her best business interest to keep like 5 guys employed every day of the week,
sure.
eating 3 meals a day. And so she kind of started pulling back on some of that. Some of the work was like less available. And then I just started taking paying live touring gigs with people.
Wow.
I think I did that for probably another couple of years before Failure got back together.
Oh my God. Wow. Like you just sound like I already know like you have a huge history before we even start talking about the Linda Perry thing. So it's just like so much to wrap my like mind around all this amazing like musical experience that you come with.
Well, I mean, it's just I've refused to do anything else. I've been out here since, like I said, 1987. So I've got 30 plus years of experience. As long as you go out and put yourself out there, I mean, inevitably you're going to wind up, playing with some really talented people.
So when
And you have to hold up your end of the bargain. Like you have to continue to get better as a musician, and people have to want to play with you in the first place. So it was a lot of hard work. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier. It's like if you were to split my career into thirds, I've actually only gotten paid and made a living for about a third of my entire career.
that
The first 20 years was just kind of like do whatever it takes to get by.
you got to just like keep working, keep doing it until you can like do it for a living, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, don't give up.
Yeah, I
I,
love
I
that.
think it's, the main thing I certainly got out of it is I just wouldn't give up.
Yeah, and I know your story is incredible. Let's jump in this chat really quick so we can tell everybody
Okay.
hello.
Okay.
Let's see, we got my mom here. What's up, Mom? You and my mom are actually friends on Facebook too, and I just love that so much. We got Jay Speakalane. We got Jacob McDaniel. He says, "You're fucking legend, bro." I have to agree. Let's see. So Linda Perry is one of the biggest writers in pop history. She sold millions of records. Is this
Yeah.
true?
Yes. Very true.
Wow, that's crazy. What's up?
But her main achievement there are hundreds of thousands of songs just sitting in a vault somewhere that are absolutely mind-blowing.
So does she just sit around and write songs and like
7 days a week she was writing them and we were recording them. 7 days a week. Like an artist comes in and she gives up like 6, 7, sometimes 8 songs, and they might take one of them, they might take all 7 of them, they might take none of them.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's kind of like a crapshoot. Like you don't win every time. Like I remember we did a bunch of stuff for Adam Lambert, and a lot of his business people thought the record we were doing, like it was very like kind of Queen and Elton John and like really pretty risky and artistic. And his crew were just like, we don't really think it's a good idea for you to go down that avenue. And I think the record he did wind up putting out was like kind of like more of what was going on. There was a lot of like ravey type stuff, pop elements, and a lot of fours on the floor, and a completely different record. But it's kind of like that. She writes all these songs, and she never really knows whether people, for whatever reason, are going to use them or not.
Yeah. And then maybe if one artist doesn't use it, maybe you can like sell it to another artist, right?
Exactly.
In theory, perfect
In
world.
theory.
That's how
In theory.
Wow, that is so cool. We got Alan Ende in the house. What's up, Alan? We got Amelia Tice. Okay, Amy, so I was talking to Kellii before we went live, and I was telling him that we went to see Failure for my birthday, and I think it was 2015. Do you remember who opened up for Failure? Where was it? And was it 3 pieces or 4 pieces on that stage? We need to know these answers.
Yeah.
Let's see. Failure is an incredible band. I think so too, Jay. I'm glad that we agree. We got Megan Richardson. We got the whole fan band here. Thank you guys for hanging out. I appreciate and love you all. Thank you to everybody who's listening at home on the podcast. I couldn't do it without you guys. So Amy says we were in Houston at the House of Blues.
The Disney World House of Blues. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. That was a good night. I remember a lot of visuals on stage.
Yes. Yeah. Does she remember whether there were 3 or 4 of us?
Amy, was there 3 or 4 in the band? We need to know.
Because that would have been on the Heart is a Monster tour.
Okay.
And like I said earlier, we brought Troy. Troy played with the band in the 90s. Troy from Queens of the Stone Age and Perfect Circle.
Nice.
He came out with us, I think probably at the tail end of touring on that record.
Very cool. So Amy says she also saw Failure at Emo's in Austin.
Yes,
2015.
that's the show I thought you were talking about. That was a really good show. I think that was with Queen Kwong, maybe.
Oh my God, how fun. Like, I'm like, all my memories. What is it? I'm getting very nostalgic right now, Kellii.
Yeah. Were you living in Texas, or were you just down there visiting?
I'm actually from Austin, or I'm actually from Texas, and I lived in Austin for a couple of years before I moved up to California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, those are my old stomping grounds.
Austin's a good city.
Oh, I love Austin so much.
Yeah.
Such a nice culture there. So when did you know music was what you wanted to do?
Probably when I was 12.
Okay.
I mean, I had definitely, music was, even before I actually got my first instrument, which was like probably the beginning. I was 11, not quite 12 yet. My parents bought me a drum set. But before that, like going probably back to like 5, 6, I had a little like 8-track player, and my older brother had given me all of his Kiss 8-tracks. And I would come home from school and would totally like, close all the curtains and grab a tennis racket and rock out to all the Kiss records and just have this whole like, drama play live rock show thing. And it was, I don't know if I consciously knew it, but it definitely was like this really awesome, like child sort of world that I would go into that at the time was like everything. I mean, it was the greatest place on earth. And then of course I started playing, and I would do the same thing, but I would come home and actually play the drums. And I think it was probably somewhere around 7th or 8th grade that I had decided that I was going to move to Los Angeles and play music. You know, and
Really?
at the time, my parents were pretty supportive at the idea of me playing music because it kept me out of trouble. And in return for them sort of patriating my, you know, drum heads and drumsticks and broken cymbals, I got good grades in school. So it was a kind of a trade-off. Um, but yeah, I mean, I decided pretty young that that was what I really wanted to do.
Why? Like, I know why the drums, right? Because the drums are the coolest instrument ever. Because I always wanted to play the drums.
Well, I started off playing guitar,
Oh, okay.
but with the Kiss concerts at the end of like Kiss Alive 2 or Kiss Alive 1, they smash all of their guitars. So I smashed the 5 family pack of tennis rackets, and then moved on to and broke a hockey stick. And just by default, I started playing Lincoln Logs and Pots and Pans. You remember Lincoln Logs?
Yeah,
Yeah. And Pots and Pans. And, you know, then, you know, hip hop was around in like the 80s. And, you know, I was like break dancing with my piece of carpet and playing drums on my desk at school, you know, and that kind of evolved into the thing that I guess became more of my identity and started to really resonate with me.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, so
but yeah, I mean, had I had gotten a guitar when I was younger, instead of smashing all my tennis rackets and moving to banging on things, perhaps I would be a guitar player.
so there was just kind of a gradual transition from tennis racket to drums.
Yeah, you know, well, it was kind of like I said, like you come home from school, it's like, you know, like what am I going to get together so I can, you know, put on this performance? Um, so, you know, it wasn't even like a thought thing. It was just like, just slowly slipped from one fake instrument into the next. And, you know, there we have it.
Wow. So what album do you feel like you played to the most when you were learning your drums?
Oh, I mean, that's hard to know. I played a lot of Iron Maiden. But I also played a lot of AC/DC. Like the first guitar player I ever played with, he and I knew the whole AC/DC catalog. So when we'd get together at his house or my house, we would just play AC/DC songs.
Okay.
But then we would gradually like move into Ozzy and Motley Crue and Rat. And, you know, then we were getting older and we were in school and they were having talent shows and, you know, we were playing at skating rinks. And, you know, it kind of, because we were in Florida, Florida is kind of a semi-professional place to begin with, especially at that time. There weren't a lot of places where you could play original music.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, the plan was always to go somewhere else. And I definitely more identified with like the West Coast rock scene in the 80s.
Okay. Okay. So how old were you when you finally got to LA? I know you said this earlier, but
17.
17. You were
Yeah,
so
I
young.
yeah, I moved here a week out of high school. I graduated June 12th and wound up here on June 18th.
So how did you make it happen?
You know, I mean, I don't know. I just stayed visible, held out my hand and said, "Hello, my name's Kellii" to a lot of people. Um, you know, I don't know.
Wow. And so did your parents move with you to LA or did
No,
you move
no,
by yourself?
no. I came out here with we two bands moved out here together. One of the bands was part of a band, and our band was part of a band. And we would, if the other band was playing a gig, they would use one of our guys. And if we were playing a gig, we were using one of their guys. And eventually their band fizzled out and most of them went back home. So we kept the one guy and sort of kept that band going for maybe like the first year and a half or so that I was here.
Okay.
Um, and then during that band, I wound up joining, we were doing a lot of local shows and the guys in Liquid Jesus saw me play. And we lived in the same building, and we kind of got closer and became friends and stuff. And they inevitably asked me to come play drums with them.
I love this story.
Well, and I wanted to continue to play drums in both bands, but the other band kind of gave me a hard time about doing that, which kind of forced my hand, and I chose to join Liquid Jesus.
Okay, very cool. So one of the very first bands I was in was called Liquid Frog. So we have the Liquid.
Well, and Frogs, Failure has a song called Frogs.
Oh, there you go. It always comes around full circle.
Yeah.
So I have a friend, Joseph Loney, in the chat, and he's saying that you actually worked on a song with one of my old bandmates, Jose. And this is just coming to my mind, and it's right. So his name is Jose Perez, and he's from Texas. Yeah. And so we used to be in a band together called Monkeys Doing It.
Oh, funny.
Small world.
It's such a small world. Dude, you know what is really weird? Like I had a software gig that I had been doing for like probably the last 4.5 years or so. And then in January, they laid me off. Finally, like they kept me through just about all of the pandemic, and then finally just laid me off out of the clear blue.
Wow.
And I put out a Facebook post. I was like, oh shit, because now I've had all this medical stuff that's happened over the last year. So I need like really good insurance. I'm like, the bands aren't working right now. So I put out a Facebook post saying, if you have a song, send me the files and I'll put drums on it. And I quite literally have done somewhere between 60 and 85 songs in the last 2 months.
What?
Yeah.
Holy cow. How do you?
2-3 days a week, I go out to a studio, load up people's files, and basically record anywhere from like, I don't know, 3 to 5 songs a day.
Wow.
So I'm doing like 10 on a really, really good week, 17 songs a week. And I've been doing it for 9 weeks now.
Wow. So has this been pretty helpful, sustaining?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, the kicker is, I remember before I took the software job, I was like, all right, I'm going to make a crack at this, see if, I can figure out, outside band income when we're working, if I can come up with something to support myself. So I put this money into building a website and, did all the pro stuff. And I like put it out there on all my social links. Crickets, crick, nothing. So I took this software job, and then flash forward 4 years, I put out one post with like a small video from, one of the video I had taken during one of the failure sessions, which it's only me, like you wouldn't know that it was a failure session. And it literally has been nonstop. Like I wake up every day to like 1 to 5 new submissions.
That is amazing. Congratulations on that.
It's very humbling, to say the least.
That is so great. So I bet you've been listening to all kinds of music. Like tell me
It's
about some of it.
The place. Like I did this one song last week from this kid in Utah. This song must have had, I don't know, probably 11 different parts.
Oh, damn.
All in completely different time signatures. A beautiful song. Like really, really technical, but really just sprawling and kind of a lot to get your head around. Yeah. But then I did, one of the first songs I did was this girl in Japan who's been working on this really cool like art piece on her GarageBand.
Okay.
So it can be anything from like the far left to like the far, it's pretty incredible. Like it's a really, really mixed bag. Anything from like singer-songwriter to like really, I just did like 5 extremely experimental. They sound more like a music score.
Okay.
Some pop stuff, some punk stuff, some metal stuff. Obviously like some more stuff sort of in the vein of Failure. Yeah. People who are, fans of Failure. I mean, it's really like all over the place. It's a pretty incredible, like the learning curve to me to just be able to, because it's a lot of mental work just to learn a song, but then record it and keep everything in a really quick, finite period of time without giving up quality, like knowing that you can't stop working on a song, it's not finished until you've put in the same amount of work that you have anything else in your career that you absolutely love and adore.
Yeah.
So it's incredible in the sense that I get to hold myself musically and personally to a really high standard.
Yeah, I do bass tracks on some of my friends' recordings and things like that, and I have a lot of people that approach me, and it's very hard for me to like make the time to be able to sit down and learn all these different songs, and I still haven't found the secret sauce behind it of how I like organize everything and get everything, you know, going.
Yeah. The paperwork that I put together, like collecting the files, like I have a text sheet of like everyone's contact information, how many songs, whether I've sent an invoice or not sent an invoice. Then I have my Dropbox full of like batches every week. I'm on the 12th batch this coming week.
Wow.
And I have like everyone with their own individual folders, and in those folders, their songs and all their stems. Like I have it pretty organized. And as far as learning stuff, the one thing I'm finding is the more I do it, like I'm really starting to pick up, like arrangements are coming to me faster and faster and faster. I was finding in the beginning, I was having to spend a lot more time, you know, like in the car or while taking a shower or while cleaning the house, like having music on and constantly listening to it to learn the arrangements.
Yeah.
But as I get further away from that first batch, I'm finding that I'm picking up and learning arrangements a lot faster. And I think that's just because I'm exercising that part of my brain. You know, it's just like working out, or, you know, when you're like getting ready for tour, at first you're like really tired and sore and sluggish. And then the second day, you know, that kind of goes away a little bit. And like a week into getting ready for tour, like you feel really, really ready and physically ready and mentally ready. And it's that same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you're probably using a piece of your brain that normally maybe wouldn't be used all the time, or however it works. And the more you use it, the more, you know, it stimulates and grows and does amazing things for us. So there's a little bit of an argument going on in the chat here with Kellii Scott.
Of course.
And it starts with, play something for us. And I go, he's a drummer. And then Luigi goes, drummers are musicians too. And I'm like, okay, you're right. It's true.
True that. True that. And honestly, I'll put this out here. I do not like playing drums. Like if I have a drum set, like I'm not one of those people that wants to sit down and just play drums. I love playing drums when I'm being accompanied by, not even when I'm being accompanied by, like it's the catalyst. When I'm reacting to other musicians and music, like that really gets me off.
Yeah.
But playing drums by themselves, like the mechanical nature, I don't get lost in that, and I just don't enjoy it. It doesn't really hit that place for me.
So do you play any other instruments besides air hockey stick?
I play a tiny bit of guitar. I mean, I don't play as much as I should. So like anything, if you don't practice, you know, you tend to get worse at it. A little bit of piano, you know, I can sing. I'm really good at writing melody and writing parts and articulating them to other people.
Nice.
I'm really good at arranging. Yeah, no, I mean, again, like part of it is, unless I have somebody to play with,
Sure.
like just picking up an instrument and playing doesn't, I don't feel as creative as I do when I'm responding and working with another person.
Yeah, I absolutely feel you
And
on.
I think bands are better than solo artists every day of the week.
You've heard it here first, folks.
Well, and that's not a slight against the people. It's just, you know, if you have one talented person, they're one talented person powerful. If you have two talented people, they're two talented people powerful. You know, the Beatles were the Beatles because there were four extremely talented people. John was John, Paul was Paul, but the Beatles were the fucking Beatles.
Yes.
Am I allowed to cuss on here?
You are allowed to
Yeah.
fucking say
Okay.
whatever the fuck you want to say.
Okay.
And you know, there's something to be said about a three-piece band too, because Failure for a long time, you guys toured as a three-piece, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's just something so powerful
Yeah.
about a three-piece, man.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. One, there's a lot of space in between each instrument, and there's a lot of pushing, and there's a lot of pulling, and there's just this tension that gets created. Like Rush has that same thing. The Police had that thing. There's this undercurrent and this tension of just three people on the exact same wavelength, just marching forward. Um, I think it's extremely powerful. I think when you start to fill in that space, it's a different kind of powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and we could talk about this all day. I mean, I don't think it's anything that I would ever truly be able to articulate. And there's a certain level of responsibility because there is so much space. Like you really, really have to be on when you're playing as a three piece.
Yeah.
If anyone's out, there's no recovering from it. If you have a fourth member, you have a little bit more, you know, to play with before you're completely out from the whole bunch. And especially with a band like ours, because, you know, we try to be pretty ambitious when we write new stuff, just sort of pushing ourselves a little bit further, and having to, we write and record at the same time. So we have to go back and learn our material. And sometimes it can be pretty challenging, because we don't take into account necessarily that we're only a three piece when we're recording things. But so far, like we've managed to kind of step up and as a three piece avoid a lot of the technical trappings that a lot of people have to employ to sound as big as their records.
Yeah.
We kind of toyed around with it a little bit on the last record, where we had like a few sort of like I think it was like 3 songs off of our last record where we had backing tracks like noises and things like that. And that was, you know, it was kind of cool, but up until that point, we had performed everything live as a band. Like if there was a sound, like one of us had to be playing it.
Okay.
So I employed like a lot of electronics, but we don't play to clicks.
Okay.
So all of those, I had to be playing the correct time in order for like time delayed parts to work correctly.
Yeah.
It was pretty ambitious, and it was very, you had to stay on point and really, really focused the entire time.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of pressure to surmount, but at the end of the show, like it's a kind of rewarding you don't just get from playing your instrument.
Yeah, I can imagine. What is the why no click? Why do you guys not want to use a click?
Because then it constrains us and it takes away that thing that we feel is part of like our magic, that pushing and pulling and, you know, that live real thing.
Yeah.
You know, and some of our parts, you know, a verse has to kind of creep and crawl, and then when it hits the chorus you kind of have to lean over the edge and push it a little bit, you know. So if you're trying to do things like that as a live moving organism, you know, playing with a click can, it makes it more challenging. It definitely makes it more challenging.
Yeah.
It can be done. I mean, we kind of, like I said on our last record, we were like, well, let's entertain this thing for, like, let's choose these 3 songs, and we'll use a click and backing tracks for those 3 songs. And I mean, frankly, it was awesome. It was super cool. And at the end of the day, I don't know, you kind of creep into this area of, does the audience feel the same way about your music? Because the main objective is to take people out of their lives
Yeah.
for the hour, or in our case, like 2.5 hours that you play. So, we always try to like keep a balance where, are we like kind of nitpicking and sort of losing the plot of everything? Yeah, we can be serious musicians and want to do things our way, but playing 3 songs with backing tracks and a couple of noises coming out of the speakers, like, does that diminish what we're doing?
Yeah.
And you kind of don't really know that until you put it in front of an audience, and what's their response? Do they even know? So I don't know. The point being is we're always willing to experiment, and we're always, in the band, we like to try to, at least try something out before saying no.
Sure. Sure.
And I think that goes like in between us each individually, also as band members. Like if someone's got what they think is a really great drum part, like I would never say, no, I've got this in mind, or, we don't poo-poo each other.
Okay.
If you have an idea, you bring it to the table, like, we check it out. And if it's the best idea, it's the best idea.
Oh,
It's as simple as that.
I love that. I remember, I'm glad that you brought up the stage show, because I remember when I went and saw you, that was something that really stuck with me. It was very visually stimulating. The music was just, it was like a whole fucking like different reality or something, that you just like pulled us into this whole different world,
Yeah.
like you're saying. So like I mean, that's a huge important part of your stage show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of the stage show is a huge important part of the concert. Like, what is
Well,
failure without
yeah.
this
I mean, you have to, without getting carried away, like there's so many really cool things that you can put on a stage. But at what point do those things become a distraction and they're just filling in the holes in your musical game?
Okay.
For us, I think it's the other way around, where we really, really work hard on these records, and we not only want them to sound exactly like they do in your bedroom when we perform them live. Like our setup is like, there are no amplifiers. We have everything is in Axe Effects.
Okay.
So our records are basically in an Axe Effects unit.
Okay.
So when we plug in live, it literally is like a recording studio. It's our same exact setup that we record records in. We're just putting it on a stage. And kind of the same thing, a lot of work also goes into, how do we present ourselves so we're, as serious about the presentation of this live record, to an audience, without, like I said, getting carried away. And we don't want our show to be a distraction. We want it to just sort of like raise it up a level, to support what we're already doing musically, and to enhance it and complement it. So it's usually very minimal. Like on that tour, I think we just each had LED screens behind each one of us.
Yeah.
So there was still a lot of open space on the floor.
Oh yeah.
And on the last tour we did, there was all of that open space was filled in with floor lighting. And we had just a phenomenal LD that came out with us, Gigi, who I mean, you should get her on here. She could do an interview with all the amazing talent that she's brought to life in a live setting, for sure.
Let's make it happen.
But to your point, I mean, we're just as serious about, because that can ruin everything. Like, 3 guys on a stage wearing their street clothes playing good music is just 3 guys on a stage, playing in their street clothes. you know what I mean? It's just, I think we generally feel that, you know, if we're gonna like drive all the way out to the Austins and the New Yorks and the Detroits and Chicagos and Phillies, um, it should be worth, like, we should put in some effort,
Yeah.
you know. And people are, you know, people work all day long and just barely make it there for showtime, or, you know, people have a myriad of things that they have to go through in order to show up at that venue. And, you know, I think as musicians, we owe them something that they're not going to easily forget.
And I think that's what sets you guys apart from a lot of other bands. You know, because it's important to think about those things, and you guys have thought about all the things.
Yeah.
And I just love that so fucking much. Let's talk a little bit. Okay, so we talked about Liquid Jesus. And so where was your transition from Liquid Jesus into, oh, you told us. So you quit Liquid Jesus to get into Failure, right?
Well, no, I actually quit Liquid Jesus to play with a local band that was called Dumpster in LA. We were kind of like, you know, the darlings around town. And things were looking really good, and then things weren't looking really good. And everything just kind of fell apart. You know, another, like, there are millions of tragic Hollywood band stories.
Yeah.
But after that, I was pretty like, okay, I can't rely on being in a band. So that was kind of when I started to try and think of a way of, all right, well, how am I going to continue to do this, but not put myself in a position where someone else is what they want out of all of this, or bad behavior can completely ruin all of my personal efforts.
Yeah.
So at that point, I started being like kind of a non-member member in about 30 bands over the next 2 years, where I was like playing all day, every day with, you know, a half a dozen bands every single week. And one of those bands I was playing with was a band called Wool. And that was Pete and Franz, who were the Scream.
Okay.
And Al Block was the bass player in Concrete Blonde. They had this band called Wool.
Nice.
And meanwhile, this band Failure, who I didn't know anything about, I kind of remember seeing one of their show posters hanging up at a local club once, but I'd never heard them. I didn't know anyone in the band. They were looking for a drummer, and Ken and Pete were passing drummer names back and forth. So while that was happening, Tom Morello also knew that they were looking for a drummer, and he had given me a call, and he had also given my number to their manager, who was also Rage's early manager. So, you know, I'm doing this, like, sort of trying to figure it out, and session player, gig player, is that for me? And one afternoon in 93, I came home, and there quite literally were like 4 or 5 messages on my answering machine. One from Ken asking me what was up, one from one of the guys at Slash saying, hey, what's up? There's this band. One of the guys from Warren Entner's office. And I believe there was also a message on there from Tom, like letting me know, because Tom was actually still living with one of the Liquid Jesus players.
Oh, wow.
That's how we sort of became friends. And I used to, one of the guys in my band used to rent Tom movies at Music Plus. It's very incestuous. Anyway, that's how I got introduced to Failure. Was just literally one day, it was like failure, 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 failure.
Wow, Tom Morello. Like, who else? Like, do you need a better recommendation from somebody to like get into a band, you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he necessarily recommended me. I think they had exhausted all of the drummers. So they asked Tom, and he was like, oh, well, I know this guy. But he certainly was not the reason I got the gig. I had to show up and play well.
Oh, of course. You're a phenomenal
Um,
player.
but well, I mean, I was still young at the time. I mean, I had a lot of natural talent, but I still at that point had a lot of holes in my game.
Well, you have repaired those holes since then, Mr. Kellii Scott.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the beauty of playing music is I mean, it's a constant quest. Like you're never, or at least in my case, I'm not one to rest on my laurels. You know, I'm always just looking for different ways to challenge myself. It also helps playing in a band with extremely talented people because they challenge me. I mean, to put it honestly, like
Yeah.
there are a couple things on the last record where it's like, all right, well, this is like the idea. And it's like, how the fuck am I going to play that? Like you programmed it. Like this isn't meant for a person to play. But you know, it's like you know, go out and learn it and put the hours in and figure out your shit.
Yeah.
You
Make it
know,
happen for
that's
sure.
part of the responsibility of playing with two really talented people.
Yeah.
You know, put
Absolutely.
in the work.
Hope you guys are taking notes at home. I got Tim Peterson here in the chat, and he goes, "Whoa, saw you guys at the whiskey in like 1996, and I've been a fan ever since."
We broke up after that show.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, did you really?
yeah, that was one of our last shows.
So was it like an epic falling out because you guys had like a shitty gig or?
No, no, it wasn't as a direct. We knew that that would be one of the last shows.
Okay.
Things had been going in a not so good direction for a while. Personally, within the band, you know, we had also just sort of, you know, individually sort of, you know, gone out on our own bad behavior that was helping pull apart the band. And also, it was like, you know, we worked really hard and we kept making these records and we kept doing everything that was asked of us, and it kept not working. You know, and even the last record, Fantastic Planet, like that. I mean, that record, you know, almost got shelved as soon as it was finished. Like our record label decided to call it quits, like right as we were finishing the record.
Really?
You
That's
know,
such
so it like sat on a shelf for like a year and a half until, you know, another label was like, oh, we'll take that and put it out. So, you know, personally, there was definitely a lot of stress pulling us apart. And professionally, like everything just, you know, it was like work, 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 fall apart. Work, 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 work. So, you know, your dreams are getting crushed and all of your hard work is going in the toilet. And it gets really, really just kind of frustrating. You know, so it was sort of just kind of a perfect storm.
yeah.
And yeah.
But now you guys like reunited in 2015, right?
Actually 2013, Ken called me and I honestly thought, you know, because we would speak from time to time and he produces and engineers a lot of records, mixes a lot of records. I thought he was calling me maybe to play on a record. He had um, called me and he left a message and I called him back thinking that, and you know, it's like, hey, how you doing? What have you been up to? What's going on? And you know, he was like, well, I don't know if you've heard, but you know, Greg and I both have kids, and we've really like over the last couple of years, our kids are growing up together, and we're hanging out a lot. And you know, recently Greg was kind of like, it was the first time, like in all these years we had hung out with our children, that we were, Greg just nonchalantly, hey, what do you think about, maybe not a failure thing, but getting together and playing music and see what happens. Let's write some stuff. And by that point, they had been writing some stuff for probably a couple months. They had I think like 3 finished songs and maybe 2 that were sort of in different states of finished. And Ken, kind of told me all of this. And in the middle of it, I was just like, oh shit. you know, because in the years preceding, you know, it was kind of like that one, like your first real love that, you know, none of your other girlfriends or bands, since we're talking about bands, your first love, like none of your bands in between ever lived up to.
Like monkeys
Um,
doing it.
yeah, but you know, and every time someone, oh, your band Failure was so cool, I love that record, and da da da, you know, it's always just kind of like a little dig in the side, and year after year after year after year, it became less of a dig, and you were, you know, more started to just sort of gain an appreciation for, you know, the music listener and what they've gotten out of your records all of these years, instead of, you know, solely thinking about yourself and what you lost.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, just when you know, you think there's enough time in between, you think you've reconciled that. Here's Ken calling me on the phone with that, hey man, we're putting the band back together. And it was just this whole like everything came flooding back, and it was just this really, there was so many competing emotions. Like I can't honestly tell you how I felt other than like really just sort of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, yeah, this is something, yeah, I mean, if what you guys are doing is like really really cool, like if this is something we should be doing, um then yeah. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was kind of crazy, and you know, a couple weeks later I get these songs and it's that same thing. I'm like, I couldn't even really hear the songs, you know, there was just so much going on inside of me. I couldn't tell whether they were good or bad, or you know, because there's all this baggage, and like, should we just leave it alone? Like we have a cool legacy, and you know, do we want to ruin this? And just a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it wasn't until, you know, probably I think maybe 3 months after he and I initially spoke on the phone, we found ourselves in the studio recording what would be the first half of our record that came out in 2015, The Heart
Wow.
of the Monster.
That is so crazy. Just the whole story and like the emotions and everything. I feel this. I feel you.
Yeah, and then I mean, we did that reunion tour, and that was like so many nights where you're just a flood of emotions. You know, you're back there trying to like lay it down, you're bawling at the same time. You're like, what the fuck's going on? Like, how did I get here? I mean, it was pretty incredible. And it wasn't like the old Failure days where, you know, we didn't know where there would be like 2 people or 52 people.
Yeah.
You know, this was like our audience that somehow grew to, you know, like 1,000 people or more,
Yeah.
through none of our doing, you know, all through the internet and all through like, you know, cassette tapes, and then, you know, all the file trading, and I mean, it was insanity. It was total insanity.
Well, it's almost like people don't know what they have until it's gone, right? Like the old cliche saying. But the same with like a band, because then you become like a rarity and people want to know, well, they hear these cassette tapes or they hear these songs, they want to know, what does the band sound like
Yeah.
live, you
Yeah.
know? That's so cool. We have a question from Joseph Scott Kramer, I believe is your last name. Thank you for asking questions.
I love people with 3 names.
Right? Joseph Scott Kramer. Does music heal your soul, Kellii?
No.
Oh shit.
I have to do that. I have to be the one to take care of myself. Although music does, it doesn't heal my soul, but it is it's a direct pipeline from your insides to the outside. When you're in pain, you can definitely put that into your playing. When you're angry, when you're sad, when you're just full of really good or bad emotion, you can definitely like drop the bad emotional level inside of yourself.
Yeah.
But I I only know that because, you know, I had a big substance abuse problem, and then you know, I got clean, and through the years have come up with a better set of tools to take care of myself. So music doesn't have to be my dumping ground. I can consciously articulate, what's going on inside me through music. Does it heal me? No, but it did, I believe, potentially save my life, in through the worst of my years, remaining a purpose, something I could latch onto no matter how bad I got. Like, I would get a gig here or I'd get a gig there, or it always kind of swooped in to sort of give me guidance and, just keep me out of the really dark depths of where people in drug addiction die.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it, maybe to answer your question, yeah, maybe it does. Well, no, it doesn't heal my soul. It allows me to like just keep the levels of things on my inside that are going to kill me
Yeah.
at a manageable quantity.
Yeah.
Um, it gives me purpose, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it also gives me um it gives me a purpose larger than just being. It's a huge responsibility for me personally. I see it as a huge responsibility to play music,
Yeah.
because I mean, it has to represent like who you are and sort of your emotional makeup and what you are as a person. But at the same time, it also has to take into, I think, greater account that music isn't for me. I get to create music for other people, and just all of the stuff that it takes to be a person, that, as a creator and as a music listener, like we all collectively share. um it's music to me is, I mean, it's a huge responsibility, one that I feel, more times than not, I think, makes me a better person. That,
100.
I can be, when I show up, I can be very proud of myself and what I bring to my game.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like music really makes me the best person that I can be if I do put my my everything into it. Um, Thank you, Joseph, for that question. I appreciate it.
Sorry, that was huge. That was a long answer.
That was huge, right? That was a great
Yeah.
question. So we're almost going on an hour. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Oh.
We're going to start wrapping this up in a little bit. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. I will get to them. Kellii, tell me what. So I know that you got to tour with like Tool and Nine
Yeah.
Inch Nails and Pussifer and Perfect Circle. Do you have like a favorite tour story that you could share with us?
Well, we didn't actually tour with Pussifer and Perfect Circle.
Okay.
We did 2 nights when we first got back together up at the Greek Theater,
Oh,
where it
okay.
was Failure, Pussifer, and Perfect Circle, and we were all collectively playing together.
What?
Like we were all always on stage, and playing with each other's songs. Like we
Oh
would
my,
have each guest in different bands, so it was like all of these moving parts. It was a pretty incredible experience, actually.
that is epic.
Like drum sets coming in and drum sets being pulled out. Like it was totally insane. And when you weren't playing, there was like kind of a like a lounge area set up. Like literally, there were lounge chairs set up, and Maynard's wine, and people were like kind of milling about and sitting down and on stage watching the others perform until it was your time to get back on your instrument. Like it was this really crazy, like it was like we were all one big band. It was pretty unique. The Tool stuff, we did do a lot of touring with just us and them. We actually toured around the a lot of Europe and America on Magnified, and then a lot of America on Fantastic Planet, as well as Lollapalooza. Never did any live shows with Nine Inch Nails.
Okay.
You know, that's on a bucket list somewhere. I think that would be a really good pairing, us and Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
But favorite tour experiences. I mean, Lollapalooza was pretty fun. I remember me and Hutch, our sound guy. Do you know Hutch?
I don't think so.
Everybody kind of knows Hutch. He's like one of the most famous sound guys, like as famous as a musician. Incredibly amazing dude and super, super, super amazing sound guy. But he and I did all of Lollapalooza, which is in the summer, in sarong.
What?
Like he got some fabric and started wearing sarongs, and I think like a day or two into it, I was like, whoa, like what's that? What are you doing? He's like, it's a sarong. A sarong? Like I've never heard of it. I want one. So he like gave me some material for a sarong. So we wore sarongs for like the entire tour. And I was on acid a lot for that tour.
Oh, snap.
Which was also pretty fun. This is still in like the 90s, and I was, you know, a little loopy. But one of my most vivid experiences was actually from that tour. We were opening on the main stage, and then they would take all of our gear on forklifts and pallets and move it over to the second stage where we would headline later on in the day.
Wow.
So we were opening on the main stage, and it's like broad daylight, and there's like, you know, maybe it seems like there's 4 or 5 people because it's so huge and everyone's still like kind of spread out. There's probably like 1,000, 2,000 people maybe. It just seems like there's no one because there's like, you know, a batch of people over here, and because they're big sheds.
Yeah.
So we're playing, and you hear my voice just go up? That's funny. We're playing this one particular song that we would open up with, another space song, which without getting into technical stuff, like the drum pattern is like this, like it never ever stops doing this. It's just constant, you know. And I used to smoke and play.
Like
and
cigarette?
I wound up knocking the cherry off of my cigarette, and it landed because my legs were open. My pants legs were kind of had a little, they were drawn.
Yeah.
And it landed like right there, and it was slowly starting to burn through toward my genitalia. And I literally had to pee to put it out.
Stop
While playing.
Rock star status on lock. I love this story. My favorite story of all time.
Yeah, that was probably like one of my funnier stories. I mean, there's a few of them, definitely. But I guess since we were on Lollapalooza, I might as well stay in 97.
Oh my God, dude, that's epic.
Yeah.
Epic. Okay, Richard Liendo wants to know, what's your favorite failure song?
Oh, I don't think I have one. There's not a single failure song that I don't just love playing. I think if like maybe let me, if you don't mind, I'll take a little liberty with your question and pose it towards myself. Like if there were one song, if you could only play one failure song and that was it, like what song would you choose? I would choose the song Heliotropic, which ends, it's one of the last songs, second to last song on Fantastic Planet. But live, it's especially epic because it's the song that just like, it's really kind of slow and ominous and menacing and powerful during the verses. And then there's this outro that's about, I mean, it's the length of another song and a half, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And just when you think it can't get any bigger, it really, really does. We usually end our sets with it because it's just the perfect song, the perfect note to just sort of end
Yeah.
a set. So in that light, it would be heliotropic.
Okay.
But then, I mean, there are other songs like the before I mentioned another space song. I think is like one of the just most beautifully hypnotic songs that we have. You know, and for my part, I mean, it doesn't do anything except play the same drum line all the way through
Yeah.
for 5 minutes nonstop, which is extremely challenging to not fluctuate in time. But
Yeah.
it's also this like really sort of zen hypnotic, like it's an incredibly beautiful song to play.
It seems like
uh,
it's almost meditational, almost like with that drum thing.
yeah, yeah. And it's not meditational in the sense of like peace, because it requires a lot of concentration.
Yeah.
Like you really, because it's a pretty slow song, so the notes have a lot of space in between them.
Hmm.
So you have to make sure to articulate every single note, which there are a lot of, perfectly every time around, or it's extremely noticeable.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide behind. Um, but then there are a lot of other songs, like newer stuff, that are pretty like physically challenging songs that I really love playing. By the end of them, just your muscles are burning. And then there are other ones that are like physically challenging in the sense of the drum part itself. Like there's a lot of really fast syncopated notes that, if any one of them is out, like it's the end of the whole ball game.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's why I love playing every song, because they're in a different way. They're all like really kind of serious in
Okay.
the sense that, you can't take any one of them very lightly. Like they're all pretty challenging, and you're constantly shifting like what kind of challenge it is to you. Um,
Yeah.
so
Um, for sure.
sorry, another long answer.
No, you're great. I love long answers for sure. um, so what's next for Failure? Are you guys like practicing right now on your off time, getting ready for tour, gonna put out another album?
Well, we are last year, kind of, when was that? Probably in like August, I think it was. We all kind of took time off and locked ourselves away for 3 weeks out at Third Encore Rehearsal Studio.
Okay.
And we brought in our recording studio and set everything up and mic'd everything live. And we basically just jammed and came up with ideas. We came up with about 30 hours of music in the 3 weeks that we were there. And then over the course of the next couple months, Ken went through most of that and whittled it down to about 3 hours. And then he started making like, sending us Dropbox links of what was up there.
Yeah.
And then individually we would go through and like kind of write down time codes of where there were parts that like we really dug. And we kind of looked at some of those notes as sort of a starting point. And Ken and Greg have actually started to work on those songs and demo them out, like kind of come up with loose to maybe finished arrangements. You never know until we actually start like physically putting drums and stuff on them.
Yeah.
But the way we had done it previously, like on the last record, we would come up with a batch of 4 or 5 songs, and then we would go to the studio and record drums for those.
Okay.
And then they would get tweaked out and some more overdubs and then mixed. And the last record we released in 4 parts, one EP with one section of the artwork and one section of the title of the record. And then EP2 would be the second section of the title and the second section of the artwork. Same with the third section. And then the fourth release was the entire double record with basically what the artwork makes and obviously what the music makes. Um, so we kind of approach every record a little bit differently. Um, so I mean that still remains to be seen how everything is ultimately going to get flushed out. But yes, we are working on a new Failure record.
Wow, so excited. And do you have merch, or how can we support you besides
Yeah, we have failure.com. Hello, what is it? Failure.hellomerch.com.
Okay.
Um, and I actually, we got a bunch of new stuff in there that we designed like specifically uh, good for the pandemic. We came up with some really cool bottles for people who are like doing hiking to stay away from people. We came up with a cool like Fantastic Planet record cover puzzle for people that aren't going anywhere. We also came up with like a cool little journal or just like a cool little sort of custom failureized small crimes book and pen. Write down ideas or song ideas or, laundry lists of things that you have to do, whatever.
Fun.
Um, but yeah, we put a bunch of new merch up. We started reprinting probably some of our more popular older T-shirts. And then, of course, as the record starts flushing out and we get artwork and stuff like that, we'll start coming up with some more new merch items for the new cycle of our next release and
Hell
tour.
yeah. That's awesome. And then don't you have a line of like fuck cancer merchandise that you
Um,
put out recently?
yeah, well, I did that. I think most people know that I like right when the pandemic started, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I go to the doctor a lot. Like I'm very serious about my health. I try and take really good care of myself with my eating and exercise and sleep. But because I'm at risk, I have cancer, bowel and colon cancer in my family. It was something I was definitely particularly aware of. So I requested that they send me a screening kit for my last physical, which would have been the end of 2019. And they sent it to me and it came back with an anomaly. So I then went in and had a colonoscopy, and sure enough, they found one cancerous polyp. So with colon cancer, lots of people get polyps. Like that's kind of normal. That doesn't mean anything. Not all polyps become cancerous.
Sure.
And it takes quite a few years to grow a polyp. And it takes quite a few more years for a polyp to become cancerous.
Okay.
So I found this one in the really, really early stages, but it had probably already been there and growing for 8 years.
Wow.
So when they went in, they saw it, they're like, yeah, you have one. And I had to do, a bunch of tests and CT scans and make sure it hadn't spread anywhere. And then the pandemic hit and they were like, well, we can take it out because I really wanted it out of me. I had never had surgery before. So, I was a little petrified of going under the knife. I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
But I kept my fears like pretty right sized. I just kept in like, okay, I'm going to do something about this and we'll worry about all the other steps as we get to those steps. I didn't freak myself out. Um, and at first she was like, yeah, I'll see you. Like, I love it when, people are proactive and they want to, deal with this right now. But I've got to tell you, because like all of us have been working on COVID patients, your mortality rate right now is about 95%. I was like, what? Like colon cancer, believe it or not, is one of the most survivable cancers because it's so slow growing.
Okay.
Um, the problem is people should be getting screened way, way earlier. And the problem is that costs money, and insurance companies don't want to dish out that kind of money for something that's most likely going to show up to not be there. It's
Gotcha.
expensive. I mean, it's the same thing with breast cancer.
Yeah.
Like those screenings, they can tend to be uh, pretty expensive for insurance companies to pay for. So they inflate the age at which you should be going to do these things, when in fact, everyone should be doing them, especially if you have a history of cancer in your family at the youngest age possible.
Yeah.
Um, but because I was proactive, like I said, we caught it really early and it hadn't spread after all the results came back. I said no to the first time because I wasn't going to die of COVID after all this.
Yeah.
And then my surgeon reached out to me about 3 weeks later, and they had all been tested. At the time, they weren't tested because they just didn't want to know. They needed all hands on deck to take care of all the people who were coming into the hospital sick. So then they quarantined all the COVID people and all the people working on COVID people over to this side of Kaiser, who are amazing. I can't say enough amazing things about my healthcare providers. But she got me in. Like I was diagnosed on May 17th, which for an Irishman, I didn't even realize that that was St. Patrick's Day until this year.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, well, St. Patrick's Day obviously took a back seat to being told that you have cancer.
Yeah.
But I was under the knife by the beginning of May.
Wow.
Yeah, and they went in. They made like let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 small incisions and a 3-inch C-section. So with the small ones, they put in like cameras and tubes that blew gas to expand the stomach and robots and all this fancy equipment. They basically took out about 5.5 inches, and that's what the C-section was for, to take out that big portion of colon.
Wow.
And then they just sewed it back together. It was good as new, all done.
And so, no, are you still getting treatment or?
Nope, that was it. No more cancer. I'm cancer free.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's not to say, I still have to do my follow-ups, because I have had this type of cancer, I do follow-ups for that specific thing twice a year. And, again, I mean, I eat all plant-based food. I exercise like nobody's business. And it's also, my thinking and my emotional state is like, between 90 and 95 most of the time. And when it's not, I go back to the well and I deal with it.
Yeah.
Because, I think your thinking and your emotional makeup will make you as sick as any of the external things that will obviously make you sick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a good point to make. It's very important to have like a healthy mindset and
Yeah. And even with this, I mean, attitude, gratitude, man. Like having cancer, like I've just upped my game. It didn't hurt me; it helped me. I evolved a little bit more. I take better care of myself. I certainly have an even larger appreciation for everything that is given to me from day to day.
Yeah.
All my life, like all of this stuff, it's a loner. It can be all taken away tomorrow. And, I get to have all of this stuff today.
Yeah.
So, there's always a lot to be thankful for, and I remember not having drapes and a bed and drums and podcasts and, and it's still kind of, you know, being positive is like the best medicine there is, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Joseph Scott actually says, I want to surround myself with intelligent people like you, Kellii Scott. Well said, Joseph. I concur with you on that.
Yeah.
You've said so many amazing things. Normally, I ask people to give me their best piece of advice, but I feel like you've given us like handfuls of advice throughout this whole interview.
I just love your life. Love your life. If there are things that don't make you happy, then change them. That's part of loving your life. Doing difficult things is part of loving your life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be able to say no in order to say, fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Wow. So we're going on about an hour and a half, you guys, and we've had such a great time this entire time. I appreciate all you guys in the chat, everybody listening at home. I appreciate you, Kellii Scott, so much. I know that your time is precious, and I appreciate you sharing that with us tonight.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. I've absolutely loved being here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now.
Thank you. All right, you guys, we're gonna get this wrapped up. I love all of you. Make sure that if you tuned in late to back up and listen to the whole episode. There's a lot of great content. You guys follow Kellii Scott, follow Failure. Lots of epic stuff is going to be coming out this next year or so. And on that note, until next time, you guys keep smiling, be kind, stay safe, and keep rocking and rolling.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Kellii. I hope to stay in touch with you, and
For sure.
I'll be following you on your journey the next year or so.
Awesome. Thank you again. And see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.